The next step for this project is to create the slab plan. Go ahead and open up your work. This slab plan should fit directly underneath these walls. I'm going to draw it directly underneath these walls. Make a new layer. This is called S-SLAB. This is a structural layer. It starts with the S. The major field code slab will be used to represent objects that are above grade so that we could see them as if we were flying over this in the air. The color for this layer is cyan. We need a rectangle that fits directly beneath our walls. We will draw it directly beneath our walls. REC enter. Now the current layer I just used was not correct, so I need to change that object over. Instead of E-line, it needs to be on S-slab. What you'll see here is that the slab and the walls are fused together. In other words, it's very difficult to tell them apart. But I don't need to see the walls while I'm working on the slab. So in order to work just on the slab, I'm going to come to my Layer Properties Manager. In the Layer Properties Manager, I click Control A, turn everything off. And then I will make S-slab current and turn the current layer on. That's the rectangle I've just drawn. This represents the profile of my slab. I need to give some information now to the edge condition of the slab. In a garage, you need the wall to start 6 inches above ground, but you need the driving area of the garage to be lower than that. So in order to do that, I need to draw what would amount to a curb that goes around the outside edge of this garage. So what we have now is a pair of lines. That curb now is going all the way around the entire building. And what I need to do is modify this per your handout so that it doesn't create a bump that we have to drive over. And it does create a raised area at the back of the garage. It's sort of a curb stop. This set of lines now represents the shape of the slab as we would view it from the air. We're going to need a print of this, just like we had a print of the floor plan below. Go ahead and save your work right now. What I'd like to do now is get a print of this part of my work. And just like the floor plan, I want to put it on a title block. However, rather than setting up an entirely new layout, let me show you a trick for using the current layout. Go ahead and click on Layout 1. You'll see all my layers are turned off, so over here in the viewport, I don't see my floor plan. And I don't see my title block because those layers are turned off as well. So the first step here is to turn all the layers on. I'm going to Control A, turn all my layers back on. Now this is a little bit confusing. I can see the slab information and the walls information, which makes it a little difficult to read the walls. In order to fix this, I'm going to use a viewport freeze, and I'm going to turn off the lines for S-slab in this viewport. Here's how it works. Double click inside viewport, and in your Layer Properties Manager, scroll across to find a column that starts off V ... or VP freeze. And what you want to do is select that layer called S-slab and VP freeze that layer. When I do that, I don't see that layer in my viewport any longer. So what we're learning here is that viewports have many different uses. One was to control scale. The other is that you can individually select layers to be on or off in a viewport using this column. I'm going to double click outside of my viewport. Another trick that we can do here is we can copy a layout tab. What I need to do is create a new layout that only shows my slab plan. Right click on the word Layout 1. Select the Move or Copy option and say Move or Copy Selected Layouts. You can say Create a Copy and Move to End. When you say OK, you'll see now that you have Layout 1, number 2. I'm going to rename this layout. Right click, rename. Let's call it Slab Plan. I'm also going to rename Layout 1. Right click, rename. We'll call it Floor Plan. From now on, when we click on this tab, we will see this viewport and we will see these layers organized in this way. When I click on the slab, for the moment I see the same thing. What you need to do is reorganize your layer list in order to VP freeze all of the layers except S-slab. It looks like this. Click inside the viewport. Click inside the Layer Properties Manager. Control A to select all of your layers. Turn all of them off. Select the S-slab layer. Turn that one on. What you should see is that in this viewport, the VP freeze column shows all of the layers as frozen, except the S-slab layer. An interesting thing about these viewports and this column called VP freeze is that the layout tab itself has a separate set of controls than each viewport in the layout. So what this means is, if I were to double click back into the paper space, I would see that all of my layers in paper space have VP freeze yellow, but all of the layers in the viewport are controlled. There is one last thing for us to do on this page before we print, which is to adjust the attributes in our title block. It still says floor plan, and the date is not correct. So I need to double click and adjust these. Instead of floor plan, this should be slab plan. The date needs to be corrected for today's date. I will apply those and click OK. Now we are ready to print. In order to print, all of the settings should be correct. Let's check. PLOT enter. We can see that our previous page setup is still in place, 8.5 by 11 vertical. The plot style is correct, the printer, the paper size, the window, the center of the plot, the scale, the portrait, everything looks good. Click Preview. And here we have slab plan with the corrected date down in the title block, and we have the right lines showing up. The really nice thing here is that both the slab plan and the floor plan now are printed at exactly the same scale and in exactly the same place on the page. they match up very nicely. It makes it very easy to read. Go ahead and send that plot.